Curtis Anderson, Chris Angus, Isaac Vasquez, Marissa Bias, Courtney, Carly, Suzanne, Logan Hatley, Lindsay Lavelle, Trisha, Nikki Miller, I don't know where she is. Sarah Naughton, Anthony Papa, Rose, Ryan Santa Cruz, Ashlyn, and Daniel Williams. Okay. Now, we're going to do a couple of things. One is we're going to go to the Moodle site and I'll show you the changes that I've made so far. And I'm just guessing that there'll be other ones. Okay, so this is where we were the last time we met, was on January 30th, recent action. And we started talking about it. We went through that first reading, figured out what was going on, basically. Today, we're going to do more recent action theory, and we will finish it up one way or another. What I've changed in here is I've just shifted everything down. So I forgot to change the quiz date, but it will be changed to February 4th. So you'll have the whole time to do it. And then with the quiz, make sure that you study for both of the readings for recent action, because there will be questions in that. I've had people in other classes have weird problems with the test questions. Somebody said that their entire quiz was the same question over and over again. I'm pretty sure I didn't do that. If something weird like that happens, let me know so I can try to do something about it. And then for those of you who will be back next year, it looks like we're getting rid of Moodle. So jump up and down and cheer. And I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and I said, I used WebCT almost 25 years ago, and it was better and more advanced and all that than what we've got now. So. These two here we're going to start with. The summary of the contents is just kind of a good, wrapping things up. Does it include everything? Of course it doesn't. Don't think that you can just look at this one little graphic and you've got it all. It's a reminder, it's an organizer, that kind of thing. And then the process graphic is a little more detailed. We'll talk about that in a second. And Okay, understanding theory, primer and the reasoned action model. Like I said, these are like kind of basic, fundamental, this is how it works sorts of points. So the first one, reasoned action model, offers a wide-ranging guide to attitudes and behaviors. The reason I think they put that in there, and like I would have put something like that in there, is that you shouldn't get locked into doing it just exactly the way that they say you're supposed to do it. You can cover all kinds of stuff with this one. It's broad enough, it's all over the place, and you can plug things into it fairly easily. And we'll see a little bit more about that later. 5 components. So if you've got these 5 components, you've got the building blocks. You can put all this stuff together and figure out what to do with it. And so those are attitude toward the behavior, which we've seen, the perceived norm, perceived behavioral control, behavioral intention, and behavior. All of those are going to be part of whatever our manifestation of this model is going to be. The third one, attitude toward the behavior, consists of behavioral beliefs and outcome evaluations. Talked about this last time. Where do you get that attitude toward a particular behavior? Like I have friends who think that like all hunting is horrible, and I'm not going to argue with anybody one way or the other on that one, but they're just absolutely convinced. So where did they figure this one out? Well, their behavioral beliefs. I know somebody whose brother got shot and killed in a hunting accident when they were teenagers. And if that had happened to you, you might be against people using guns in hunting. Okay, so the behavioral beliefs, there are going to be other behavioral beliefs. Like one of the things that I come to if I think about this topic is, I'm not like dying to go hunting or anything, but I know that there are people who have to, and that's a different behavioral belief than some of my friends have got. I know that there are people who feed their families by hunting, and if you don't have the money, that's what you have to do. And so, I have a lot of trouble getting upset about that. But that's a deviation from the hunting is evil thing. And it's based on my personal observations. There are other observations we could have about something like hunting. There are all kinds of ways of doing this. There are also different kinds of ways to hunt. When we think about hunting, generally, we're going to think about guns. What would we think about next after guns?
Bows.
Yeah, bow and arrow. And I've gotten into arguments with people about this. My dad used to go bow hunting when we were kids, and he'd take us with him, which I thought was like kind of crazy. But we'd be up in the mountains on these, gravel roads or whatever, hanging out, and he was off doing this thing. He never actually shot one. When I look at what he did with the bow, I felt a little bit better about it than if he had brought a gun to shoot Bambi or Bambi's mother. The reason that I find it a little bit easier to handle is that bows were different then than they are now. My dad, his friends, most of them had bows, and off they go on the weekends. But they didn't have those massive compound bows that you have to like crank to get open, and you shoot them near anything, and it's going to go like 2 or 3 feet into whatever it is that you shot. Those to a lot of people seem kind of excessive. It's like, do you really need to blow the deer's head off of its body? No, then maybe you shouldn't be doing this. But it's not all deer hunting. Who in here has gone frog gigging before? There aren't a lot of us, especially around here. Frog gigging is you like basically get a stick and put a nail or something in the end of it and go wade around in swampy water, and when you think you see a frog, with a stick, you gig it and put it in a bag. I've gone, but I've never actually gigged a frog. I like frog legs, but not quite that much. But the thing is, that is a different setup. People are not as likely to get upset about you killing a frog as they are killing Bambi or Bambi's mother. We have different ideas about what they're supposed to be. Even when we have personified frog characters, that's still not enough. And so, it's okay. It's better to do something to them than it is to do other stuff. Another hunting issue is the danger of the animal that you're hunting. I know that there are people who go hunting for things like cougars and bears, And they do it largely because they like to hunt, but they found a place where, yeah, that's okay, because these are dangerous animals and nobody's likely to complain that you've shot yet another cougar. And out where I live, the place is crawling with those things. A lady about half a mile from me was out in her yard at night, looked up in a tree, and there it was, the cougar, waiting to eat her. Another house, they put their game cam up, and they got 2 cougars dragging one of their goats in from the outside and eating it on film. So these are different attitudes, and our attitudes toward those behaviors are going to change as the behaviors change. Those behaviors are not carved in stone, and they're not always going to stay that way. I know at some point in my childhood, I guess, I swore that I would never, ever, 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 ever fire a gun. They scared me. Didn't like to be around them. Most of the people my dad knew who had guns were icky, and that's not what I wanted to do. And zoom ahead to me being about 40, like right before I moved to Oregon, visiting a friend, and this guy, he actually had pet cougars and a pet bobcat and a pet Siberian tiger, seriously. And it was all about guns, and we figured it's just because, if one of those things attacked him, that's the only way he's going to save himself. His attitude about those animals is very different than the hunter's attitudes. Those are his pets. They're his babies. They're not things that are out eating, the livestock or anything like that. And in fact, he slept on his sofa so that he could have his hand on one of his cats all night. And it wasn't to make sure he knew where she was going. It's because it was affection. It's like a pet. The last time I was out there, I was like sitting on the sofa, and across the room's a big wood stove, and he's standing there, and the cat's on the floor, and so I've seen this 100 times, this is okay. He turned his back on me. The cat very quietly, calmly stood up, and very quietly, calmly started walking in my direction. Now, what would your reaction be? That's a lot like mine. Get this cat before it eats me. And it made it up to me, and it thumped, like right in the middle of my chest. It's like a hard nose thump. And I'm figuring that was a warning, because it could hurt me if it wanted to. But these are people's pets, and you see them very, very differently. One of the real downsides of living in Falls City is that people dump their cats there. I mean, like, you would not believe how many wild cats there are. And there are people in town who will go around and gather up your wild cat to take it and have it spayed or neutered, so that we don't end up with 100 billion more of them. And where I grew up, if there was a stray cat or a wild cat somewhere, somebody just shoot it. It wasn't something that they would think about. It's like, a wild cat, I don't want this around my house, but it's gone. They're not as likely to do that out there. They're used to the idea that people are going to dump these cats, and it's not the cat's fault. And I think that's what I keep coming back to on this, is that it's not the cat's fault. And what can we do to solve this? Well, get them spayed and neutered to start. And then there are also people who will catch your stray cats, and if they're okay, they'll try to find homes for them. And that is, I think, a long-range solution to the problem that you don't get with just blowing them away. But the whole thing, like I said, I swore I'd never fire a gun. I was at this dude's house, the one with the cougar, and they're cougars, and a friend was out there with me, and he said, "Yeah, Nick's never ever shot a gun," knowing that it would set this guy off. It's like, oh, he has a mission now. And so he said, "Yeah, come on." Grabs a couple of guns. We got in the back part of his property, and he's got cans already lined up on a log for us, even though he didn't know that we were going to be doing that. So I figured it's not for us. He gave me a rifle, told me what to do. I did it, and I blew the can off the log. Then he gave me a pistol and told me what to do, and I blew the other can off the log. And that did a lot of things for me. One is it got me over the fear of touching a gun. It's like the world doesn't end if I touch a gun. The second thing is I'm not bad at it. And if it came right down to it, I could probably, use a gun for hunting or self-protection or whatever. My attitude changed based on what I observed about that behavior. Hunting, shooting guns, I'm not still real fond of them, but I know that I can do them. I know that that behavior fits in with other aspects of my personality. Frankly, we haven't actually seen a cougar in our yard in Falls City, but we've heard them twice, and it is an unmistakable sound. If you've ever heard it before, it sends chills down your spine. But my attitude toward the behavior changed because I fired these guns. I knocked the cans off, and that was it. It wasn't the end of the world. Nobody died. The police didn't show up. None of that kind of stuff. So we go to the other one, and that is the outcome evaluations. What are the outcomes? Well, there are a lot of them, no matter what you're looking at, and different aspects of those outcomes. Some of them are going to be more positive and more desirable than others. We'll start with the hunting thing again, and there's like the worst case. What's the worst case scenario for going on a hunting trip?
Get shot.
Yep, that'd do it. And this is something that people think, oh, it's just idiots who do this, or morons who've been handed a gun. Do you remember Dick Cheney, president under George W. Bush, shot one of his friends in the face with a shotgun, and the guy lived. Everyone was really surprised, but you don't have to be an idiot to have a mistake, to do something wrong, anything like that. But you have to look at those as possible outcomes. It's like if I'm with 2 or 3 people and I know them really well, and we all know what we're doing with whatever it is that we're doing, I don't worry about somebody messing it up real bad, blowing up a building by accident or something like that. But not everybody thinks about those consequences. The dorm I lived in college was unpleasant. Nice way of putting it. Like on my floor, my sophomore year, they assessed each of us $50,000 for damages, and it was damages done by like 2 or 3 people. There were holes going through the walls into people's dorm rooms. I know they got you can shoot tennis balls out of a tennis ball can, but you can put other things in there too, like a baseball, or shards of glass, or rocks. And they were doing that, and so we'd have to send something out to kind of draw the fire if they're going to do it, and that's the only way you could really get out. But really unpleasant. A friend of mine lived 2 floors down, and on his floor, he had some neighbors who had a grenade launcher. They wouldn't tell anybody exactly where they got it. They wouldn't tell anybody exactly where they got the ammo for it. But they had this stuff. And I would have stopped before I got to that point of having a grenade launcher, but not everybody apparently does. So they have this thing, so what do they do with it? Well, this is where we have a problem with outcomes. They love to go out in the country, nobody's there, all that kind of stuff, and shoot this thing up in the sky. And somebody said, well, what are you shooting at? And one of them said, I don't know, an airplane. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to shoot a plane down. And they never did. But that was an outcome that would have stopped me before I got there. And I don't want to be the one who's arrested and put on television for shooting down a plane and killing 100 people or whatever it is. But they didn't seem to mind. Their assessment of outcomes was very different. And that it drove them to what they did. The good news was that they flunked out of school before they could get degrees. So, okay. Other outcomes. If we stick with this hunting thing, one of the outcomes could be that you get enough food to feed your family. When I moved into my house in Falls City, the lady next door came over to the house. She'd been real good friends with the old lady who lived there. And, she's kind of looking around, you can tell somebody's looking around at the new people's stuff. And she said, well, where's your freezer? I said, on top of the refrigerator. I don't think that was the response she wanted. The thing about this, where's your freezer? And I said, well, why? You know, we don't have a freezer. And she said, well, where are you going to put your game meat? I didn't know we would have any. You know, it just kind of like never occurred. But that idea of having to have a place to store the meat that you shoot would be an important one. If you don't have that freezer, then you need to be thinking fast about how you're going to get rid of all that meat, because you can't eat it before it rots. So, you know, that would be another outcome that you might look at. Another outcome might be that if you have guns in your house, that there's a chance that your kids or neighbor kids or whatever are going to shoot themselves or somebody else. That happens often enough, and you know, it shouldn't be a big surprise anymore. And it's not something that I think anybody would really want to say, yeah, you know, shoot the neighbor lady, because that's not what they're there for. What's the solution to that gun accident thing? It's an easy one. Doesn't involve banning guns. Gun safe. Buy a gun safe. You put your guns in it, you lock it up, and carry the key with you, and nobody's getting guns, and nobody's having an accident, nobody's going to accidentally go shooting, you know, their neighbors or any of that. So there is a way to deal with that. Now, the thing is that not everybody goes in that direction when they make those reasons. The people who do, I think of as being like really responsible and good gun owners, and you know, hold them up as models. And the people who don't, I think of as being irresponsible and incapable of thinking about the welfare of other people. And that scares me, and I stay away from them and their house. Makes sense. Okay, number 4, perceived norm has 2 components: an objective norm or motivation to comply with what significant others think one should do in a particular situation. Okay, so we talked about this last time a little bit. The idea of significant others wanting you to do something. Sometimes we're really clear on what other people want us to do. They tell us in no uncertain terms. And it doesn't have to be bad. You know, it's just that you know where it's directed. I said something about this before. My grandmother was bound and determined that I was going to law school. And you know, I really would have rather shoot myself in the head than go to law school. My dad wanted me to go to college where he did. East Tennessee State. I did get a job offer from them about 12 years ago. But I didn't want to go there. It's in the town that my parents grew up in. All 4 grandparents were there. I guess one of them had died by the time I was college age. But there are a lot of reasons I didn't want to go there. And part of it is that I don't trust my dad. You know, if he tells me to do something because it's good, he may be lying. You know, he may be lying. He may want me to go up there so that I suffer like he did. But you don't know. There are other instances, well, okay, like my other grandmother, not the one who wanted me to go to law school. I said something to her about, you know, she wants me to go to law school, I don't really want to. And she said, honey, you do what you think is right. And I thought, those are words to live by, you know, seriously, is that I don't have to listen to all of these people. Like my mom has tried, I don't know, like how old am I? Like past almost about 40 years, has tried to tell me how to vote in every election. And I appreciate her participation, I appreciate her concern, seriously, but I'm a grown-up, and I get to choose who I vote for on my own. And so I'm not going to pay attention to her. Well, and then my grandmother, the one who didn't want me to go to law school, she said that, I said something about, well, did Granddaddy ever tell you how you're supposed to vote? And she started laughing, and she said, every election. I said, well, did you? And she said, all I'll say is that once I'm in that voting booth, nobody knows what I'm doing. Okay. The thing is that made her a more credible source because she defied her husband, she did what she thought was right, and she also voted in every election. Not many people can say that. I can't say it. There are a couple of like local things. Like we got a ballot a few years ago that had nothing on it to vote for. It was just like, you know, all these offices and it's blank. So, you know, I didn't vote on that one. But all kinds of messages that we're getting from these people, we're processing and figuring out what we can do with them. And some of them are obviously easier to handle than others. When somebody is telling you what to do, you question their motives. Why are they doing this? Why are they asking me to do this? There may not be a good answer to that, or not one that you can ever figure out. One example of that I've seen, I haven't really gone through this, but I have friends who have, is like if two friends have a falling out, they're not tight like they used to be, and they may be okay, but they're not best friends anymore. And so, people ask them what's wrong and all this. Somebody is going to try to talk somebody else into going and making up with the other one. And maybe both parties will be told that they need to go and make up with the other person. Now, the thing is, there's some times when you probably should make up. But there are also some times when there is no point. It's not going to get better. It's not going to get fixed. It's going to be the same horrible situation that it was before. So when people are telling you to do this becomes, to make up, it can become a problem. If you tell me to make up with somebody else, a mutual friend, and I don't, you might blame me. It may be that, like, this person, the third party, the friend, decides that since nobody's being nice to him or her, they're going somewhere else. And that happens. I've had students here, off and on, down through the years, who are dating somebody else on campus. And not like I have any concern about that. But what happens is that they break up. And they're both going to a school that's small. How easy would it be to totally avoid somebody you really don't want to see? Now, there's some things you could do that would be fairly direct. Like if you know what somebody's schedule is, you get a schedule that's opposite there so that you're like never free at the same time, don't have to worry about running into them. I've had people like move to a different place, like a different dorm or different apartment with different people, so that you're cutting off that connection. But I was surprised at the number of people who, when they go through that breakup, will transfer away from here. And the reason I find it amazing is that I cannot imagine placing so much power, vesting that power in somebody I broke up with or who broke up with me. Either way, that's telling you this isn't working and you should do something else, but we get kind of bent out of shape. Okay. Then, descriptive norm, beliefs about how frequently significant others have performed the targeted behavior and identification with these others. Have they done this before? I remember as a kid being taken to an amusement park, and it's probably my aunt, because she was like 9 years older than I am, the big sister I never had, and was like core evil when I was a child. And so we would go to the fair, and she taught me into riding a Ferris wheel when I'm like 4 or something. And that's not a good idea. Even if the kid knows kind of what they're getting into, that's not a good idea. And her justification for all of these things, every horrifying ride that was there, she wanted me to get on. And her justification was, well, she did them, I can too. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't think so. That doesn't sound right. And it's because it's not right. If these people have not performed the behavior, they have less credibility. They're less strong as a source than they would have been otherwise. And number 5, these constructs with their subcomponents, and there are subcomponents, can forecast intention to behave in a particular situation. In a particular situation. If you're looking for something that's going to cover every person in every context, this isn't it. We know that our behavior in situations like this is situational. I find myself in a particular situation, and I've had interactions with the situation, know other people who've done that situation, and so that's what I'm likely to pay attention to. But the situation probably matters even more than the individual that you're dealing with, except in cases of extreme personalities. Anybody ever go to a wedding with a date, like a real date, not just somebody that you asked to go as eye candy? How'd it go?
It went fine.
Mixed bag here. Probably the most horrible one that I went to was Mike's wife's friend's Catholic, and they had a full-blown Catholic wedding. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm going to die before this thing is over. The thing that's good about it is that I did not blame my then fiance. She's not the one who set this stuff up. She's there to support her friend, and I figured I can do the same thing, and I'll keep my mouth shut. And probably a good idea. Another one I went to, a friend of mine from high school got married. They had to give directions to the church because nobody would have found it otherwise. Think backwoods, literally backwoods. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was like you turn off the pavement and go on like 4 or 5 different gravel roads, and then you find this church, and the only reason that you're certain that it's there is that you can see the graveyard next to it. And there were a bunch of us there. We were being respectful and dressed up and all that kind of, wore a tie and everything. And it was just weird, and it got stranger as it went along because they started engaging in their personal religious practices, which I have no problem with, but doing it while other people are kind of forced to sit there. There were people who were rolling around speaking in tongues, and I know that I've never been to any other church that did that. There were people who were, it's like falling out is the best term I can come up with. It's like they're just like going into some kind of emotional frenzy, and they literally fall out of the church pew and then onto the floor, and they're flopping and screaming. We didn't have any snake handling, that was good, and we didn't have anybody trying to feed other people strychnine or any other poison. That's good too, because some of those churches do those things. And that's what most of us are sitting there thinking is, oh God, they're going to bring out the poisonous snakes yet. We got to get out of here. It didn't happen. But our connection with all of that stuff was, it had to be guided by situation. I didn't have any referent for this. I'd never seen this kind of stuff, at least not up close. And so I wasn't real sure what to do, how to handle it. And so what do? I look at the